Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to the webinar on model-based approach to mobile apps testing. I'm Pramod from Strategy and Marketing Division of Nous Infosystems, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. I have my mobility evangelist today with me, Mr. Ajay, Mattoo and Mr. Dhanasekar as well. Today's webinar will span for an hour, consisting of the presentation for 40 minutes and a Q&A session for 10 to 15 minutes. Before the start of presentation, I would like to set few ground rules for the smooth proceeding of today's webinar. Firstly, I request all the participants to keep their microphones on mute. Secondly, the participants are requested to post their questions by typing in the chat window. We will take all those questions towards the end of the webinar during our Q&A session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible, and the unattended questions will be sent to the participants along with the answers over the email. I would ask Ajay to take us through the presentation now. Over to you, Ajay.
Hello everyone, my name is Ajay. I am the head of mobility testing at Nous Infosystems. So today in this webinar we'll be talking about the model-based approach to the mobile app testing. So basically, our agenda for this webinar we'll be talking about the past and present trends in the testing, particularly related to mobile. Then we'll be talking about some of the mobile app test challenges and some of the key ways to solve those challenges. We'll be briefly talking about some of the test models and how those test models fit into the mobility technology testing world. And then we'll be talking about one particular model which we have designed at Nous. So we call that model as long fun cup model. And in the end, we'll be talking about the benefits of this model and take about a few questions and answers. So let me begin with this slide. So what this slide means is in the earlier days we used to basically with the advent of the internet, the whole desktop or a laptop became a prime source of our communication, or communicating with the people or doing our work. So the web became the prime importance for doing everything else. But in the last last decade, in particularly last 4 or 5 years, with the advent of phones and now the smartphone, there is a paradigm shift. So it's more about now the mobile first world. So everything most of the people do is to do on the mobile, and that can be seen in terms of the growth of apps, the kind of data people are collecting. So it's some of the biggest e-commerce sites, for example, if you look at the data, so for most of the people 70 to 80% data comes from the mobile devices and only 30% data comes from the websites. So what this slide basically depicts, earlier days when we used to plug in the computer and then we plug in the mobile phone. So at that time it will give us a warning, do you trust this external device? But now the kind of table have been turned. So it is when you try to put computer back you try to insert computer into the mobile phone, so it is asking, do you trust this computer? So then that means whole world has become mobile, and going forward we are already seeing some new trends like wearables becoming more forward. Going forward, there might be not even a smartphone, it will be all the wearables and other allied technologies. So some of the few challenges with the mobile app, because mobile app is not similar to a website. They are also, it's something they are changing the way we live. They are these apps are available all the time because our mobile phones are present all the time with us. And what that means is the way we test these mobile apps is also different than how we test the websites. Here there is no concrete difference between functional testing and a non-functional testing. For example, if your app is loading slow, and then the user going to never to use this app. So whether it is a performance problem or a functionality problem, we cannot say. But at the end of it, the user is not able to use this app. So so it's not like a clearly in the web, in the traditional web, where you have clear distinction. Okay, the functionality is working, but the performance is not working. Here it is all intertwined together, and here also, like, as I was saying, the non-functional testing is not security and performance. Even your functionality testing is kind of interlinked with your performance, and performance is interlinked with your user experience. And generally in the web world, we have certain measures of performance like throughput and speed. Those things doesn't work in the mobile world, because here performance, as I told you, can be as simple as app is not able to use, so I have no connect to the app and I will never going to use this. So these are the few of the challenges what we are finding in the mobile world, and as such also in the mobile testing. So how do we solve this problem is, like, definitely there has to be certain tools different tools can cater to the different challenges. And when these tools, we worked with the test models, so definitely we have come up with some test models. So we will talk about that in a little bit in detail bit more. And then is a big component is the testers, the mindset of a tester. So basically any tool or model, it will not work if you are the people who are implementing them, the testers, don't have a correct mindset of how a mobile app is complex, and how do all these three kind of wheels fit together. Is only then we can found a solution to the problem. But the testers will play a major part. So let us briefly talk about some models and test models in general. So a model is nothing but is a representation of a more complex idea, or it mimics basically a behavior of a system, and that behavior can be basically include some inputs, some data flow happening through that system, the output. So all these things basically help us to define a model. And obviously, generally, when any tester tests a system, he uses some kind of a model, but it's more of a model is very ad hoc, or it is in his mind. So when we try to put the model on a paper, then it helps us to understand this complex. It helps us to how to represent the system properly, the behavior. We can come up with more test cases. It gives us idea about, okay, something is missing. We can come up with the test cases basically in a more logical form, and it also tells us, in the end, will give us a clear picture of certain parts of the testing which are repetitive, and then that gives us clear test cases which we can automate. So those are the basic advantages of any model. And we use different models in different, like data in the data analysis, we use different model, predictive model, and just like even when you are trying to design a car, nobody designs a car on the shop floor. They use the simulation and the modeling techniques. So similarly, to know what model fits into the mobile technology world, you need to know what are the major components which play a part into the mobility world, and as such into the testing as well. So first of all, mobile, there is a certain kind of a hardware which is associated with the mobile, which is not traditionally associated with any other device. Like you have gyroscope, accelerometer, camera, GPS systems, and sensors. And nowadays we have all kind of health-related apps. All those things or sensors, health-related sensors, which can take your ECG, stuff like that. So all these is integrated into your mobile. Then you have another, like the software, and we know that there's a gestures. It doesn't work only by clicks, it works by gestures, swipes, touches. It is a much more emotional device, because we use it every day. It's in our pocket all the time. So you have a much more emotional connect with your mobile phone than with your laptop. And in fact, there's a new term called nomophobia, which means the phobia of the phones. And it seems currently it's the #1 phobia running in the world: the loss of mobile phone, or being away from mobile phone for a certain period of time. And then we have certain user expectation. Obviously, as we're talking about, it's a personal device. We use it in anywhere, right from toilet to the airports. I will be lying down on my couch to drive. And one more thing about I think that this is the most critical aspect of mobile app testing is the user expectations, because the mobile users are very, very impatient people. If your app is not loading fast, it is not doing the things it's supposed to do, they will never come back to this app. So that we have to be very careful, and that's adds another layer of complexity to this mobile technology. With this, I will pass to my colleague Dhanasekar. So Dhanasekar will today going to talk about this particular model which we have designed at NOS. It's called Long Fun Cup, and he will be going into much more detail into that. We will be discussing all the aspects around this model. Over to you, Dhana.
Thanks, Ajay, for a wonderful introduction about mobile application and how different or how unique they are compared with the current web or desktop softwares. So as Ajay was pointing out of different mobile integrated features, the way the user uses mobile application and the software interface definitely makes mobile application testing much different and much harder compared to web application. So how do we solve the new challenges that's been brought up by all these new features and options in mobile application? So what we did is we studied all these additional features or the uniqueness of mobile application, and then we have come up with a model that helps a tester to cover different aspects of mobile application. And that's what you are seeing in the slide, which is called long fun cup. It's a simple mnemonic that is being formed out of various aspects of mobile application or the mobile phone itself, the hardware itself. So looking at this, the L, which is which stands for the location, orientation, network, gestures, functionality, user scenarios, notification, communication, updates, and platform. So let's now get into details of each of these in the upcoming part. So let's look at the first part of the model. It's long and L for location. This is another interesting feature of a mobile application where the mobile has ability to track the current location, since it has its location tracking device or the hardware part of the mobile phone. Consider an example of let's say taxi booking or taxi booking software. So if you're really if sometime back when you're booking the same in a desktop, you just open a browser and try to give the current location or maybe your office address or a home address sorry, then the destination, then you wait for the taxi to arrive. You never know when he will arrive. You may need to go and wait outside, or you need to wait for the driver to call. But those days are gone. Now if you want to book a taxi, you can just book with a click of a simple one tap. So the application is capable of identifying your location and then figure out what is the nearest taxi available in your locality, and even it could help you to track the taxi arrival. So it will constantly give how long it will take for the taxi to arrive your location. So based on that, you can plan things and then you can just step out at the right time. So this is a simple and interesting example of what Ajay was talking. It's changing the way we live. It's changing the way the problems are solved to the user. So as a tester, he should be aware of such unique features, and he should be able to test all these features based on the purpose of the app. So for example, how do we test for such apps? You cannot if you're outsourcing to, let's say India or somewhere, and you wanted to test a location tracking app that's been used in US or Australia. So how do you do that? So there are options to mark your location. Google Developer or Google SDK iOS both have an option to mark your location. So the tester should know how to mark locations and how to test location tracking app. Location, again, it's a privacy concern, so it also needs to be tested for whether the app is getting enough permission from the user to before tracking its location. Can a user disable or enable it? How easy or how difficult is to check or change all the location tracking. So I would always say it's a sin to test a mobile app sitting at your desk. So you have to move around different places. Even though you mark location, the locations where you cannot travel, still you could travel around the office where you are working or the tester is working. He should be moving different locations to test such app. So these aspects are covered under location. So when tester look at this word location, he should be aware such things to be tested. So this helps with the coverage of, okay, maybe at the end of 2 days your tester would say, okay, today I focused on location and here are the coverages, here are the different things that's been tested with respect to location. Now moving on to orientation. Orientation again is a very specific feature that's available only in mobile application. Now the user uses mobile application not just sitting at the desk and looking at the monitor. So those days are gone now. User uses while sitting in a couch or lying in the bed or even in toilets. So the orientation it's very handy and it's very critical. A different orientation needs to be tested, not just keeping mobile in one position. For example, a user might be browsing an e-commerce app to buy something. Sitting in the couch, after 10-15 minutes he may feel like tired, or he'll feel like let me go to bed, lie down in the bed and continue my browsing. In such case, maybe while in the couch, and a user might be comfortable in a portrait mode, but once you hit the bed, maybe he needs to he will generally switch to landscape mode. So how your application behaves, or how it continues with its intended purpose when user change orientation. For example, there are many times your application crashes, or the action that's been performed stops or being killed or crashes when you change orientation. For example, if user is downloading some songs or video after he buys from let's say iTunes, when you change the orientation, it stops downloading and it never recovers. And let's say if the user is trying to sign up or fill a form, and he filled all the information and then he changes the orientation, all the data that's filled get vanished. These are real-time bugs that I have personally faced while testing mobile application. So that is another important factor that helped us to come up with such models. So now the focus will be only on orientation. Once the functionality is tested, the testers focus only on orientation and make sure such things are identified very early in the cycle, and those bugs are fixed before it's released to the market. So how do we test for this? Let's say there are 10 screens in our application, and each screen can perform let's say 2 to 3 different functionalities. So now tester has a matrix 10 screens, what are different functionalities that can be done across these screens, and then he makes sure that change the at every action that he performs, he changes all different orientation that is supported by the app, so that at the end of the session the tester will know that okay, how good or how bad the app performs with respect to orientation. That's a quick idea about how we do orientation testing. Then getting into network. A network is again another critical factor with respect to mobile, because mobile phones can use both Wi-Fi and cellular. So how does app behaves when it's been switching from Wi-Fi to cellular network? Within the cellular, it could switch from 3G to 4G, 4G back to 3G, and it could even switch between cellular towers, and it could be even different operators when you roam in a different international network or something like that. So how does your app behaves during such transition? Is the app able to continue its functionality, or it gets stopped abruptly and user switches between Wi-Fi to 3G? So such kind of tests will be covered as part of your network. And then you look for strength, various network strengths. For example, you generally get a very low signal when you get into the basement parking or a remote area. So how does app behaves in such environment, which is very practically common thing that a user might face in a real life. So testing that is sitting in an high strength Wi-Fi within an office space is not always good strategy to test. So as a tester, I would love to roam around different places testing the mobile app. Now getting into gestures. Gestures are again unique to mobile app. It's before mobile. If you look, we always just do click. Even though you type something in the text box, still you first do a click. So it's nothing but click in desktop. But now coming to mobile, it has more than one way, more realistic, more natural way of interacting with your mobile app. For example, pinch, zoom, double tap, and then swiping the pages when you read an ebook. These are very close to realistic and a physical touch that that mobile apps provide. So how do a tester test for all this? So for example, is it consistent? Is the same gesture is used for same kind of action throughout the app? Is the gesture inconsistent with the platform standards? So these are different things that need to be tested as part of gestures. That's about the first part of the coverage, test coverage model. Now moving on to fun. Here F is for functionality, U for user scenarios, and N for notification. Functionality and user scenarios are very standard, which needs to be done irrespective of its mobile or web. So any app that's come for testing, I would start with functionality. Once all the different functionalities are working fine, I would get into testing user scenarios before moving on to other integrated tests like the location, orientation, or network and gestures. So how do you test functionality? Functionality is like this is what generally will be documented in your requirements. So it's a good starting point to test your application, whether it meets whether it meets the requirement. Anything starting from opening your app, closing the app is covered under functionality. You check for tapping every option, start an app, keep it idle for 5 to 10 minutes and see how it behaves, and then try to accomplish tasks that the app is supposed to do. So this is again standard functionality, nothing unique or specific to mobile, but still this is the critical part that needs to tested first. Now getting into user scenarios, again as a tester or as a test manager or whoever is responsible for test strategy needs to be very sensitive towards how mobile apps are used by users. Ajay was talking about how mobile apps are changing the way we solve problems. Again, that becomes very critical when you think about user scenarios. For example, if let's say I'm referring a book in my webinar. If 5 years back, if you are attending my webinar, then probably you might take a note of the book, go back home, or go back to your desk after the session. Sorry, and then maybe you open an Amazon website, search for the book, order the book, and wait for a couple of days to come to delivered to your to you, and then maybe you start reading the book and you say what a crap he referred and it's it's not a good book, or you will feel wow, this is a wonderful book that I need to read to do better testing. But think about current situation. If I refer, say, let's say you need to read lessons learned in software testing, so that your testers, or you need to recommend every tester in your team to read lessons learned in software testing. So immediately you just open maybe an Amazon or a Kindle app or an iBooks. You go buy the ebook and then start reading immediately. By the time I finish my webinar, you might be focused towards reading the book than listening to my webinar. That's how things are getting changed in the mobile world. So these are things that a tester needs to be aware and think how a user might use the application, and then come up with more credible, more common, and more complex scenarios to test. So how user scenarios helps to I always believe that testers are providing the testers are there to not finding bugs is not just the job of a tester. More than that, testers know things could be different, and they always provide information to the stakeholders on how to take a good, well-informed decision. So now let's say I have come up with based on the purpose of the app, I have analyzed, and then I have come up with, let's say, 20 different scenarios that a user might do in the app. After executing those 20, I may go back to the stakeholder or the product owner and say, look, hey, look, these are the 15 things, 15 different user flows or scenarios that the user could do very easily, but look, these 5 have some problems. So it helps the stakeholder to take a clear decision whether the app can be released with those 5 scenarios not fixed, or in those out of those 5, how many needs to be fixed before they send it to market. So these user scenarios helps the stakeholders to take a good, well-informed decision. So while creating user scenarios, tester needs to keep in mind that he is testing a mobile app that could be used much different than a traditional software. That's about user scenarios. And now coming back to notification, excuse me. During desktop or laptop era, you never know any update, or you never know what's happening or what's the change that happened until you switch on your laptop and log into your laptop. But that's not the case with mobile. It keeps bugging you with updates, it keeps sending you notification and keeps asking, hey, look at me, there is some update, hey, look at me, there is some update. So that's a kind of again a different way and mobile app works. So you constantly get notification from different apps. So is this notification from the app that is under test is annoying the user, or is it too less notification to be provided? So what kind of notifications are being used? Are you using a push notification or using a local notification, or is it being implemented correctly? And how often you get notification, and how easy or how difficult is to enable notification? Is the notification in standard with the guidelines provided by the platforms, or various aspects or various questions need to be asked when you test the mobile app for notification? That's about the fun part. Now getting into the last but very equally important part. It's called the CUP. C stands for communication, and U for updates, and P for platform. So let's start anti-clockwise from communication. I think 99% of people, or most of us, forgot that mobile phones are meant to be making voice calls and sending SMS. These days, very rarely people use for making a voice call, but the fact is, whatever you are doing in a mobile phone, when you get an incoming call, everything else stops and call takes the priority. So you cannot avoid bypassing these. So how does your app behave when you get an incoming call? How does app response after you reply to a message, you reply to an SMS, or after you talk for an hour of incoming call and then you come back to your application which was actually playing a video? Does it resume from the place where you left? Is the audio back, or is the download resumes after you come back? These are the various aspects need to be tested when it comes to communication. So if you have 10 screens, 15 functionalities, or 15 functions under each of those, now you go to all those 10 different screens, open a specific screen, do a particular action, and then maybe another tester would be making an incoming call that comes to you, and you check how your app behaves after getting such calls. So these are things needs to be tested. This is very critical aspect. Maybe I would always do this test once I am done with the basic functionality, because this is more critical than any other aspect. And again, it depends on the context. Suppose if I am using a e-commerce app, then network becomes equally important, so that user are able to browse for products, and they are able to buy and download. Maybe if it's an ebook or a music, they are able to download that without any problem. So again, the context and the purpose of the app derives, or it decides the priority of which among these to be tested first. Okay, that's about communication. Now getting into updates. Updates, it's about both updates of the app under test and also the update of the operating system itself. So it's been close to 7 years since we got our first the current generation mobile app for the iPhone platform. We already have 8 major iOS release, maybe close to another 8 from Android. So the platform keeps themselves updating every maybe 6 months, if not 6 months every year. So how does it affect or impact the functionality of the app? A small change in the platform could reduce 6 steps that you are currently doing to achieve a specific task. So as a tester, he should be aware. He should also, along with, generally there are developer data sheet that comes even in an operating system update comes to developer, and there is a developer edition which always gets released first before getting a end user update. So the reason is, the developers should be aware what are the new changes, so that they update their product, their app, so that their app is up to date when the new operating system gets into the market or gets into the users' devices. So it's not just developers. As a tester, the tester also need to be aware what are the changes that's been coming up in the new release, so that they can be ready with much clear, more efficient and good coverage of test cases to test the new additions that are coming up in iOS. I mean not only iOS, and in Android as well, new updates. For example, the flat screen, the flat design that changed completely. There were guidelines which says your app icon should be 3D and it should be curve edges and a lot of guidelines. But in the latest version, not latest, in iOS 7, things, the UI completely got changed. So you should be aware. So how do we test for this? Are you ready with test a different and updated test, so that as soon as you get a new app, you are able to test it properly? So these are the various things that a tester needs to look when doing for update tests. Now getting into platform, the last but not the least. So far, all the other aspects will give you a direct test cases or very tangible tests to be performed across various things we discussed. But platform is more about the idea is to make testers equipped with right mindset and right kind of information, right kind of skills to test iOS and Android. As a tester, I believe you should be very clear, and you should have a good understanding of both Apple iOS platform and also Android. You should know why certain things are done in Apple in certain way, but a different approach in Android. So they both have their own way of doing things. The culture of you should also you should be aware, you should be up to date with even to the level of understanding Apple culture, how Apple develops product, how Android does, and why there is always a stiff fight or a thermonuclear war between Android and Apple, so that you are it becomes very intuitive, and it becomes very smooth to test, and it also helps you to quickly decide whether a specific icon that is present is a bug or not. For example, the share icon of an Apple phone, Apple app will not be same as Android. Android has a different icon for a share. So sometimes we have seen the same icon is used in both Android and iOS, which is not correct. Sometimes your app might get rejected if you don't put the right standard icons. So these are the things that a tester will understand once he keep a close watch on what kind of things are happening around Apple and Android platforms. So there is a big Android design document that's available in their website, developer.android.com. Similarly, Apple has a huge human interface guideline available in their developer website. As a tester, I always say why it's called developer.android.com. So it's also for testers. As a tester, you should definitely have to read all those, so that you are well informed about the things that's happening around the world. So that's about the platform. So with this, I believe I have given a quick and maybe not a good, maybe a dirty introduction to the long fun cup model that we generally use to test mobile apps at UI level. If you notice, all these aspects are at UI level. You test at the user interface. This is the model actually designed to test at the user interface. So there are more such models that helps you to test beyond the standard UI. For example, this model is not talking about installing, or this model is not talking about performance, how battery is used, how data is how much data is used, so such kind of things. So we have different models to test those. Probably we might have a different webinar maybe coming months, so that we can share that knowledge as well. Now, why this model and how it helps? Excuse me. So as Ajay was presenting at the beginning, like mobile, the functionality is no more just functional testing. So for example, the orientation or the network switching between 3G to Wi-Fi. Is it functionality or non-functional testing, which it's hard to derive a line in the mobile era. So it helps you to test beyond the documented functional testing or the documented tests. It also helps to cover all additional mobile integrated features that is now a de facto standard. So now if you're developing an let's say at a taxi or a taxi aggregator app, you may still make a functionality of booking a cab without using the location tracking, but that becomes a de facto standard. So if somebody else uses a easy one tap one click booking of a cab, users would prefer to use their app than struggling to type a lot of information in the app. So it's like it helps you to as a tester, it helps you to cover various mobile integrated features. It helps cover bugs early in the cycle, so that a lot of time is saved in terms of fixing the bug. So there are generic test cases that can be automated across various apps. For example, talking about orientation in a login screen, or while an app is launching, it's standard across any app. You have to test certain generic tests across every app. So those things is easily identified and can be automated, so that you repeat across various regression cycle or various devices. So that's the benefits that we have. We are able to see after applying this model. Now it's about the feature Ajay was talking about in the past and the present. I would like to give a quick idea about what a feature would look like. So if you look at this, there are a lot, all these my credit cards, maybe a train or a local commute ticket, driving license, my wallet or a passport. Everything could be just lying in a small mobile device that I carry today. Maybe next seminar could be I will not even have my passport or a credit card. So everything is getting stored in your mobile phone. So we are talking about wearable, we are talking about IoT. So none of these are present in my model. This was a model that was developed just a couple of years, maybe not even 1.5 years, 2 years back, but it's already looks like it's outdated. So that's why I keep emphasizing that you should be always stay up to date with technology. So this model may not even be handy next year. So that's I keep repeating. As a tester needs to be aware of what's happening around the technology, so that he could justify or do justice to his job by doing a good testing. Okay, that's a little yarn about what a future could be. So with that, we come to end of this a good 45 minutes webinar on mobile application test model, or a model-based mobile application test approach. I think we have another 10-15 minutes to take questions from you. Maybe I think it's good enough to answer 8 to 10 questions. If your questions are not answered, please feel free to write to me or Ajay. We're always there to help and learn from each other to make testing more efficient and better. So just give me a second before we start with question and answers. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of questions already been typed in. So the first question is can we automate these tests? I think this is the one of the slides I was talking about. Automating generic tests. It's not always you jump into automation. So it depends on the context of why do you need to automate, or how long you will run this project. For example, those days are gone when it took years, if not months, years to get into release. So there are projects which went for 3 years before getting into released to the market. Big e-commerce websites, they keep updating every now and then. So that time, yes, it helps you quickly to do regression or smoke tests can be automated. It can be run across various browsers for regression testing. But in mobile, sometimes it just takes a month to develop a mobile app and release it to the market, and you never think about next update for next 3 to 6 months. So such case, you really need to think is it worth investing in automation? That's in generic about automation. But coming back to the question, can we automate these tests? Yes, it can be automated to an extent where it's not where it's actually to the extent where it's actually feasible. So for example, orientation tests, I doubt if it could ever be automated. And also disconnecting or switching from network to Wi-Fi, sometimes you may not be able to automate. But a good functional test, yes, it can be automated. That helps you to run across different devices. Basically in mobile, it helps you to achieve device coverages than a functional coverage. Hope that answers your question. And the next one is very I always like to answer that question. What is more challenging to test, Android or an iOS? Both has its own challenges. Android, the challenge is the device coverage. It's very, very hard to cover a device. For example, when we were testing one of e-commerce app, at the menu that's supposed to look in a dark green, actually the entire menu was looking orange in a different manufacturer because those guys has changed the UI layout of an Android. It's a local Indian manufacturer, so they changed it, and it looked very weird in a different manufacturer device. So you could never say that if you test in 5 devices, you could never say it could work in all the devices. That's a real challenge in Android. When it comes to iOS, the challenge is different because iOS is very strict and they expect you to develop an app like an Apple product itself. So there are a lot of stringent App Store approval guidelines that sucks a lot of your time, and it's you feel like you achieved something when your app is approved in their App Store. That's a challenge testing iOS app. Next is how to test in how do you achieve a device coverage, or how to test in different mobile devices. To answer this, let me start with Android, because that's where device coverage is critical. When it comes to iOS, it's very simple. You have 5-6 devices clearly mentioned. That too, for example, if for instance the iPad mini resolution is same as your iPad 2. So when your apps is working in iPad 2, it will definitely work in iPad mini. That's how Apple designs its form factor. So that's not a big challenge when it comes to iOS, and you don't have different manufacturers in iOS. But coming back to Android, so it again depends on whether your app is already in your market, already in the market, or it's a new device, new release. If it's already in the market, definitely Google Play will help you to understand the top installed devices, so that list helps you to narrow down to how many devices needs to be tested, so that you cover at least say 80% of 90% of your user. Then those devices also should be from most popular manufacturer. It should cover the most used Android versions. Developer website of the Android developer website always gives you the statistics of what is the most popular operating system and the share of each of those operating system. So from that you can also derive, okay, what are the top 4 or top 3 operating system I need to test, and then followed by the various screen sizes. So this matrix helps you to narrow down, let's say, 5 devices which will cover 5 different screen size, 5 different manufacturers, and 5 different operating system, which gives you a very high coverage of close to 80%, if not 90. Then remaining can be covered using your a cloud-based solution. For example, if it's an enterprise app and you expect to be covered in 100 different devices, then you could always go for cloud solutions like we have Perfecto Mobile, which helps you to do automated test, and it can be run across various physical devices lying in their lab. So that's how you approach to testing different devices. Personally, I always love to test in a real physical device, because that always helps you to feel how an app works in the real world. I hope I answered your question. And the next one is, can we use same test to test both in web and mobile? That again depends on I'm assuming that the same app is the same product is across in mobile and web. Yes, it can be done if test cases are written in such a way that as a tester, if he reads and understands what the real intent of the test case. It's not about log in, open the browser, type in the URL, go and click on the login button. If that is the case, when you test in the mobile phone, you no need to read through those 3 steps. So until tester maybe coming to the 10th step or the 11th step, he will never know what to do with those with that test case. So it should be again decided initially at the strategy level of how to write test cases, and then so that it can be reused across both web and mobile. Next one is what is this model-based approach different from other testing or conventional based tests? Is the question. That's an interesting one. Model-based approach. How do I? Okay, it's like I like to explain it with an analogy. A model-based testing approach is roaming or touring an unknown city with a map, and a conventional based testing. I assume that what here the listener meant conventional based is maybe more ad hoc way of writing test cases, because you will have a requirement, and generally people write test cases based on requirement. Let's say one requirement 1.1. Okay, 5 test cases a tester will write. Maybe a test lead who has more experience than the tester will add up 2 more tests to that. Maybe a manager will add another 2 more tests. And you end up getting 10 test cases for one requirement. But nobody is sure whether this 10 is sufficient, 10 is enough, or 10 is not enough to get a good coverage. So that's a traditional way. So it's like so roaming a city without a map, but a model-based approach is roaming a city with a map, so that you always know where you are, what are the different places you covered, and then what is your next target. So that's how I see model-based test approach is more structured, and it always helps you to to look back and see where you are, and also it will help you to to achieve your next target. Hope I answered the question. That's why I always like model-based testing. Again, if you look at the construction industry, and you always or an automobile, you always come up with a 3D model before you start developing or constructing. So that always helps you to get a clarity, or it's hard to visualize certain things. So a model-based test always helps to visualize the entire landscape and how much is covered and how much needs to be covered. Okay, and maybe probably we will take one or two questions before we wind up. The next one is what kind of tools are used in mobile testing? Coming to tools, yes, that's part of our initial slide where Ajay was talking about test models, tools, and testers mindset. So all these three are equally important so that you do a very good testing. So to me, the tools is a third part. First one is you have a good testers, then you come up with a good test model, and then looking at the test model, if you have a good a skilled tester, the tester based on the context will be able to identify what tools to use to achieve their testing. So tools is the last part. For example, if you wanted to automate testing, then you could always go for, if you want to automate both in Android and also in iOS, then you could, when you are okay with open source, you could go for APM, or you need a more private a more sophisticated solution. You don't have much time to automate, and you wanted to cover in various devices, then a tool like Perfecto Mobile cloud solution could help. And it's not it's related to automation. And apart from that, there are various tools that provided by Apple, not various tools, one the Apple developer SDK, Xcode and Instrument helps to monitor a lot of parameters with respect to the performance of the app. Then in Android you have DDMS, you have Azure decompiler and many such tools that helps to do various kind of security testing and performance testing. Maybe we'll take one more question. It's about effort estimation. Always the challenging thing to do. Like the question goes like this: how do you do an effort estimation to complete testing? It used to be in the desktop era, it's always challenging to make a good estimate. But in mobile, at least with this, again, this test model helps you in estimation as well. So let's say I have an app to test that has 5 menu. Each of the menu has around 3 to 4 core functionalities that can be accomplished in those 5 screens or 5 menu. And then I have my long fun cup model. From that, I will based on the purpose of the app, I will cut down whether among all those 10 aspects of long fun cup, how much is applicable to this particular app. Or even it's not necessary that 6 is applicable across all 5 screens. For example, your ebook reader. If I'm testing the reader part, I no need to worried about the network, but I need to more focused about orientation and gestures when I read an ebook. When I'm purchasing a book, if I'm in a web store or I'm in the storefront where I'm purchasing the book, then I would be more interested in how it behaves in different network, but not may not be gestures. So this helps me to narrow down into how many screens or how many functionalities cross how many mobile aspects need to be tested. This helps me to come up with a good estimate of how long it takes to test in one device. Now, if you want to test in 5 devices, I think it's simple maths to come up with how long it takes to test in 5 devices. That's how the approach has been so far, and we have had a good success in terms of estimating mobile testing based on the models. For example, I was telling about the different models. So for long fun cup, yes, it will take this much stuff. Do you want to do a performance testing? You want to go below the UI and test? Yes, we have a model, similar approach. Okay, 1, 2, 3. We have 4 different models, and here is the time that takes to test all the 4 in 5 devices, or only 2 of those models in 5 devices. That's how we estimate test effort. Yeah, I think with that we have hit our time limit, and it's wonderful to be presenting about our mobile model-based mobile testing to all of you. And thanks once again for being part of this presentation. Hope we will be connecting again, either with your questions, or probably maybe our next webinar on a different topic in mobile application testing. And yeah, that's it from myself and Ajay. And we once again thank on behalf of Nous Infosystems for being part of this presentation. Thank you. Have a good day.